And greetings, Doom fans. Welcome to another edition of Collapse Update Live with Steve and Ari. And today we're going to go through the cornucopia of Doom news stories that are hitting the waves. We're going to go to the Reddit r Global Collapse channel and look at some of the stories that have been hitting the media over the last 24 hours or so, and talk about the usual stuff. Before we get into that, though, I want to do my usual plug for the Sun Foundation, and you guys to make a contribution if you enjoy our shows to that. It's a nonprofit organization, and it you can take it as a tax deduction if you make the contribution. Working for sustainable energy and affordable housing and food production, organic food production. So there should be a little card up in the corner here that will flash on, and you can click that to make the donation. All right. Steve, welcome.
Nice to see you, Ari. It's great to be here.
Yes, I see you're doing something there.
Well, again, I have to prepare myself for this show. It's complicated. I start the day before, and then when the show goes on the air, I have all these devices. I have to shut them off so they don't do anything I don't want them to do when we're live on the air.
Yeah, and also hang up that white drop cloth that you've got there. That's
I have to hang up the white drop cloth and hide all the. I got it's incredible. This is like NASA around here. I got all this technology. I'm surrounded with gadgets, just so that I can. If I don't have them, I'm nothing. So.
No, we all need our gadgets. We all need our electronics to keep us entertained and.
Right, the security
have meaning in our lives.
Well, more than that, I'm sure you feel the same way. I'm a content provider, and you are a content provider. We need to have these things. We need to have information that we can digest, and then make some kind of observation about it. So,
yes, and that's our job, observing clap. So, let's get on with content, right?
Exactly.
Stop the chit chat. How about let's start with our presidential farce election and the idiot he is making of himself, the Donald Trump. He made an idiot of himself all through the campaign, but of course that made him very attractive to the Republican electorate, and so he got the nod. But now it seems like the entire party wants him to quit. What do you think about that idea, Steve?
Well, Donald Trump is very popular because he's forceful, and he doesn't really care what other people think, but at the same time that he's forceful and uncaring, he thinks desperately about what other people. He cares desperately about what other people think. So he's kind of torn. There's all this, kind of mental tug of war going on inside Donald Trump, and the conflict becomes very, very, it takes a lot out of him. And what's happened here recently, the Clintons, who are professional politicians, they've been doing this for decades. They basically, they fired a torpedo into Donald Trump below the waterline, and I'm not sure he can stay afloat until November. The business with the Khan family, it was something that Mr. Trump should have seen coming, and he could have easily dodged it, and instead he just basically showed everybody in real time how unready he is to be a statesman. So,
well, it's also has the problem of what his helpers are, or his staff is essentially his family. They're also not professional politicians. They don't really know the ins and outs of that business. And
before we go on here, maybe I ought to give a little background so that people would know what we're talking about.
well, go ahead. What background do you think? And people don't know about the Trump campaign?
Well, it's not that. I mean, obviously, the Kants appeared, Mr. and Mrs. Kant they're Americans, but they're from Pakistan and Pakistani descent, and their son went into the military and was killed in Iraq. And they appeared at the Democratic convention, and they made basically generic remarks about nothing in particular. But the implication was that they're Muslim, and they lost their son defending the United States, and Donald Trump's attitude toward Muslims is not the same as theirs. And but the real backstory goes back further when Bill Clinton was the president, and his administration was under siege in the late 1990s, and he was being impeached, and there was all these investigations and a lot of accusations of misconduct. And one of the things that he did was, the wags say that all the TV sets in the White House were tuned to the Weather Channel. So there would be a tornado or a flood someplace, and Clinton would be right there on the TV set, wringing his hands and feeling everybody's pain. And basically what you had was a backdrop of suffering, of other people's suffering. You had these people poking through the wreckage trying to recover something. And the president, basically using the whole process as a prop. So with the cans, you have exactly the same thing. You have people that have suffered some great loss, who are suffering misfortune, and the Clintons are grandstanding, using it for their own political end. And there's no doubt about that Mr. Trump was alive during this period. He should have been paying attention. Somebody should have been paying attention and say, look, this is something that the Clintons have done before, and they're good at it. Just don't make any remarks at all. Just, say, well, that's politics. That's all he had to say, and the whole thing would have blown over. But instead he fell into a trap, and now everybody's trying to, distance himself. It's like, he tries to skewer the pieties, and he doesn't know what he's doing. So it's a tremendous blunder, and it's hard to see how he's going to get around it. He doesn't have a huge amount of time to recover.
Well, and besides all the the rest of it, with that controversy, and like I said, he relies basically on family members as advisors who are not professional politicians, and then on top of that, he's just named his financial advisory team, which is basically just packed with billionaires, and he ran on the
he's a common man.
On the idea that he was working for the common man, but who's he pulling in for?
Yeah, push comes to shove, Ari.
What do you think? Who do you think they're going to look out for when they're advising him financially? Are they going to look out for Joe Sixpack, or are they going to look out for themselves? What do you think?
The Clintons are just as bad. There's no doubt about it. Robert Rubin and Larry Summers will kind of come out of the coffin like vampires, and they're going to be out there advising Hillary Clinton on what should be done to, help out the little guy from the Democratic side. So in a way, Donald is being honest, but again, he's kind of tone deaf, and I think he's counting on most people not really paying much attention who he's appointing for everything. I mean, I think the biggest loss is he fired his old campaign manager, and I don't think there's anybody has any real grip. I mean, obviously there's not much of a grip. So he's under a lot of pressure. The Trump University is going to trial. The business with his taxes. It's like it's just one mistake after the other, and it's hard to recover from that.
And then on top of all of the rest of it is his campaign finance war chest, which is, basically it's got nothing in it, at least the last I heard about it. He doesn't have any fundraising skill or whatever. He claimed that he was going to finance himself campaign, and but the truth of the matter is he's probably not liquid enough to do that. It costs like $1 billion nowadays to run a presidential campaign. Hillary Clinton has something like $500 million in her campaign war chest, raised from Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan Chase and everybody else on Wall Street.
Hillary's been running for president.
But Donald has, bupkis.
Well, Donald is probably broke. I mean, my guess is he has almost nothing. So, people that are, public figures, they can be broke and they always skate. Somebody will pick up the tab. It's like OJ, he's in prison now, but, after his troubles, he was broke. And, but he still could live a fairly luxurious lifestyle because of, friends and associates. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump is in the same situation, which would be ironic. He would have more in common with the working class because he would be broke like them. And you got Clinton, on the other hand. She's been running for president ever since her husband stepped down. So she's done everything, anything possible. And she's left no stone unturned, not just fundraising, but organizing. And, she went out and she bought all the super delegates. And, she stacked all the primary elections, and, just about everybody important in Democratic National Committee. All of these people have been either paid off or, rendered, neutralized so they can't cause problems. And it'd be interesting to see what would have happened. She's such an unpleasant candidate, and she's probably not that pleasant a person either. It's that, even with all these advantages, she almost got headed off in the past by Bernie Sanders. So, but she's really been working hard. She's got a lot of money, a big, like you say, a big campaign war chest, and she has basically a lot of, all the advantages. Plus, with Trump self-destructing, what's he going to do next? I mean, the best thing for him to do is just kind of take a week off and just, keep his mouth shut.
Yeah, go golfing.
Go golfing, cheat at golf. What's the matter with you, America? Why would you vote for somebody who cheats at golf?
Well, like you say, it's hard to know exactly what he will do next, what kind of gaffe he'll make, but you can be pretty sure he'll make it. And as I said before, the people in the Republican Party are, wishing and hoping for him to step down. But of course, there's always that forced step down known as, a lone gunman. One of those has three names, or two names always before his last name type guys show up.
No, that's not going to happen. I don't. The Republicans are stuck with them, and it may sound like I'm anti-Trump. I actually thought Trump had a few good ideas. I mean, Hillary is the warmongers candidate, and Trump doesn't really sign on to that sort of thing. So he's already got a fair amount of goodwill, as far as I'm concerned. We've squandered so much of our treasure and goodwill around the world with these stupid wars, and it's just a business. The people that actually do the war, they're doing it for money. There's really no political or economic reasons to do it, except that it puts money in the pockets of the contractors and the people involved. I think stepping away from that would be a really one of the best things that America can do. And I think Trump is inclined in that direction much more than Hillary and the Democratic. I mean, the Democrats have all gone into bed with the defense people, and for whatever reason, political reasons, they can say, well, we're tough on terrorism and all the rest. But basically, all they're doing is bankrupting the country.
Well, you'd say there's no economic reason for the wars, but there really is, which is it's all about getting control over the oil that comes out of those places, and who controls this pipeline or that pipeline. Basically, Afghanistan is just an oil pipeline, right? And so
Well, I don't think that's the reason why we went into Afghanistan.
Oh, well, what do you think's the reason then?
The drug business.
Oh, yeah, the drug business.
I
Well,
think that's the reason why we
could
were in
be.
Vietnam too, RE. I think we went into Vietnam because the Vietnamese government had control over the drug business in Southeast Asia. And, we just figured, we'll throw good money after bad, good soldiers after bad. We just kind of like doubling down, hoping that, the other guys would quit. And because we knew if Hanoi people took over, the whole drug business in Southeast Asia would, could slip out of hands of, interested parties in this country. So, I mean, there's rumors about it, but it's really the only thing that makes sense. I mean, there's no oil to steal in Vietnam, and there's no oil to steal in Afghanistan. There's plenty of opium. So it's a giant business. I mean, it's billions and billions of dollars. So
Yeah, okay, I'll buy that. The drug business definitely is probably only second to the energy business in terms of its total profits every year,
right.
and it certainly is owned by many people on the Anglo-American side of the Illuminati equation. So yeah, that makes as much sense as anything as far as Vietnam and Afghanistan are concerned.
I mean, I don't want to veer into Alex Jones territory here. I
Well,
want to step on his toes.
Alex gets good ratings, so
He does. I mean, it's kind of a conspiracy theory, but there's all these theories have some little nuggets of truth here and there, and the whole enterprise has been so shady, and there's so many questions that arise that don't have any real legitimate answer. Like all the stuff that went on in Central America, it's still going on. We have problems in Honduras. Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, had something to do with that. And what is the American national interest in Honduras, other than the fact that it's a pipeline for narcotics coming from Latin America and going to the United States?
well, Panama down there has basically served as a money laundering center. So that's yet another possible reason. Of course, I don't think Vietnam or Afghanistan ever served as a money laundering center. But they also do need to have a mechanism or to control South America, the rest of South America, and so that that conduit through Honduras, Panama, etc. That's also a human trafficking corridor, which is yet another big business these days. So, and bringing up labor from South America, for instance, to work in the fields of California has been an ongoing thing since the grapes of wrath days, since they ran out of Okies to pay, peanuts to. They've been using imported South American labor. That is what makes American farming possible, really, and all the low prices every day you pay at the grocery store. That all comes on the cheap backs of cheap labor that comes out of Central and South America.
Donald Trump is going to put an end to that. He's going to dragoon Mexico into building a wall.
Yeah, that'll work. All right, let's move off of Trump and get over to the news channel, Our Global Collapse on Reddit. You guys should check it out. It has the most comprehensive list of news links in the world of collapse every day. And just look at some of the latest stuff. We've got up a video from Jonathan Pye, who does newscast parodies on their published on Russia Today weekly, and he's pretty hilarious. In this one, he's talking about privatization of the land that we live on, and how our rights are basically being sold off to private interests without our permission. Steve, what are you thinking about that problem of privatization?
Well, I'm looking at it, I'm kind of shaking my head here, trying to look at the camera and shake my head at the same time. It's like we spent, the modern period began in 1450. Gutenberg invented printing. Okay, so everything has gotten better and better. For hundreds of years, we go out into the world using whatever we can get our hands on to extract more resources. Then we turn the resources into waste, and the rich people take, the wasting process as a collateral for loans. So the finance loans the money to the rich people, and then, everything is turned into waste. And what's happened is since 1998 is, the process doesn't work anymore. So all of the things that have been developed since 1450, all these different economic theories, things like private property, austerity policies, and Austrian economics, and Keynesianism, and mercantilism, and all of these different adjustments to the rules of money and wealth, property, and so they don't work anymore. So you have people in places like England and in Europe where you have this, and in other parts of the world where you have people say, well, we're going to just change the ownership of this particular item or that particular asset, and we're going to give it to another bunch of people, and just because of magic, they're going to make these assets more productive. But instead, they all fail. And this is just another failed strategy. I mean, they're going to try everything. I mean, they've tried, lowering the interest rates down to zero. We've got completely fiat money. There's no hard currencies. We don't have, there's really no checks on any kind of spending. I mean, whatever strategy these guys can think of, they're trying it. We've gone through the whole business of nominal GDP targeting. They're talking about helicopter money, which is an idea from Milton Friedman. And, it's just whatever they think of, QE, Operation Twist, open-ended monetary easing, fiscal stimulus. It's like when George Bush gave everybody $600. I mean, none of these things work because you can deploy as much money as you want. You're not going to get a return in the way of resources. The more you spend, it's a diminishing returns. It's really very simple. And we don't have an economic regime that can deal with this reality where we have less resources rather than more. We can't just go out there and get more. So this is just another failed strategy. And it'll be controversial for a while, but then the incontrovertible truth is that, well, it's just something else to go in the ash heap of stupid economic ideas.
Oh, there are certainly no shortage of stupid economic ideas or stupid economists who promote them. The fact that so many of these people can get PhDs, Paul Krugman got a fucking Nobel Prize. You really do have to wonder how these, it's a kind of big circle jerk of people that support each other and pat each other on the back, and meanwhile, Rome is burning.
The thing is, Ari,
they're playing the violins and Rome's burning.
See, we're very privileged. You and I are very privileged. We're living at a time where this kind of seismic shift is taking place. That's number one. I mean, 7 billion other people are living at exactly the same time. But you and I, we have a different viewpoint on how the system really works, okay? I didn't really say that very well. But our take on it is different than the rest of the people, particularly the ones in the establishment. So all the stuff, all the nonsense that people like Krugman and Mankiw and all these other economists, going back for hundreds of years, all of the things that used to work don't work anymore. And it's not really because they're stupid. It's just that it made sense. All of this kind of, Keynesian, liberal, highly extractive approaches to dealing with capital, with the non-renewable resources, That stuff worked. It was great. You know, back in 1950, it turned the United States from an agrarian, semi-agrarian country, you know, just escaping the Depression, into this kind of economic powerhouse. So it did fine. But, you know, while we were turning into a powerhouse, you know, we were burning the furniture. That's how we got to be a powerhouse. And now the furniture's gone. All that's left is, you know, we got to burn the house. That's all that's left.
Yeah, well, it got control over the finance, and you know, Wall Street and the City of London basically, you know, control the issuance of credit around the world, and so by, you know, you've brought this up on numerous occasions. What we produce here is we produce credit, and because the rest of the world is dependent on that credit to function, we can now start not just burn our own house down, and we can proceed to burn down the houses all over the rest of the globe.
Right, they take dollars. It's all for sale.
Yep, and that's the truth. And speaking of for sale and who has jobs, another story we've got here is that the United States has lost 195,000 good-paying energy jobs, and so replacing them are bartenders and waitresses. What you know, where do you see the energy industry, the job market going as we move down the pipe here, and not just in the long term, you know, but near term? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, they're all going to lose their jobs. The whole oil industry, the entire petroleum industry is insolvent. You know, their customers are broke. So how are they going to keep their jobs? I mean, the only thing that's holding the oil industry up now is that they can borrow, but their customers can't borrow. So they just keep getting deeper and deeper into the hole. And, you know, the thing that's amazing about that big number is that you have to ask yourself, it's like, what were all these people doing? You know, these high-paying energy jobs, what were they being paid to do? I mean, granted, some of the, you know, the rate of extraction has fallen off a little bit, but I mean, were these people actually doing something useful, or were they just, you know?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I do know at least one highly paid geochemist seemed to spend most of his time trolling my website, your website, a few other websites.
Paid to troll.
Yeah. He was being paid about $500,000 a year to troll.
Good job is out. We're not going to have any more of those guys.
Yeah, but you did mention the fact that you know, what the energy industry, they're all insolvent and basically running on the fumes of credit, as it were. And if you go down the Our Global Collapse webpage, there's yet another story coming from Wall Street that junk bond issuance collapses in the U.S. and Europe. So this endless source of credit that has been issued to the energy companies to keep this game going another day or another week or whatever. You know, how long can that last? It's these junk bonds is the way in which these various extraction companies finance themselves. So, you know, when does Wall Street, when do the too big to fail banks and the Fed and whoever else is in charge of buying this dog shit, you know, bonds, when do they stop buying the dog shit?
Well, it's just privatization again. I mean, it's like it's a magic word. You know, they can like, well, we'll privatize the credit system somehow, and that'll make it work forever. And well, maybe not tomorrow. Maybe we get it to last through the end of the day tomorrow. So I think all these guys are going day by day. And you know, the thing that's interesting about this is that you know, you have the small companies like in Eagle Ford and Bakken. You know, those are the companies that borrow using junk bonds. You know, they've been superstars for a while because they were getting oil out of formations that nobody was getting oil out of before, and they got a lot out. So it was a tremendous narrative. It was really great. The only problem is that none of them were making any money. So, they're kind of, stepping off into the sideline here because they're underwater. And but you deal with the big producers, the majors, like the American majors. I think Exxon or Chevron, they're the only company that actually made money, but they didn't make very much. And all the rest of them, ConocoPhillips, and they suffered losses, and the big foreign companies are suffering losses, and national oil companies whose budgets include, things that aren't related directly to the oil business, like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Nigeria, Russia, they're underwater too. And, it's a business where nobody's really profiting, but they've spent all of this money. I think Art Berman pointed out that they spent something like, well over $1 trillion. But, they're getting the same amount of oil out that they did before when they were only spending, $400 or $500 billion. So again, it's diminishing returns. And, the lenders can't just keep throwing money at these guys forever. Somebody has to turn it around, but there's nowhere to go. I mean, we've burned up all the $25 oil, so you get down to $25, there's no oil left.
Well, you say that at some point they've got to stop lending to them, but the problem is that that's when the music stops, right?
Right.
The banks themselves are insolvent, so if they stop lending, then basically they're admitting they're not going to get paid back for the billions and trillions of dollars in loans that they've already made.
Right.
They have loan books that are all bad. So it's not
Of course.
only the energy industry companies that go down the toilet. As soon as the lending stops, the banks all go down the toilet too, and the whole financial industry is demolished.
Well,
So how can they stop lending?
Well, they can't, under the current regime. I mean, all finance is a set of rules. So they always change the rules. They can say, well, what we're going to do is the government's going to produce its own money as repayments, and we use it to repay some of these debts. That way the banks don't fail. But that doesn't really solve the problem. Doing that doesn't, produce more resources. So instead of spending $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion, they spend $10 trillion and $20 trillion and a quadrillion dollars, but they're still not going to get the oil out of the ground. So, I mean, all they can do is buy a little time. So what do they do with the time? I mean, if they listen to me, since I'm an expert, I know all about this stuff. Hooray for me. We would have a conservation plan and say, look, this is what we're going to do. We only have this much left, and we're going to make the best of it. We're going to keep it in the ground, and we're going to use what we absolutely minimally need in order to keep our systems functioning to some level, and that's it. We're going to adapt, but we don't want to adapt. We want to keep playing. We've been playing now since for a long time. We keep the party going, even if it's just for day at a time. We'll keep doing that. So that's why you have this. Like you ask, how does the finance system survive? That's not really the issue. The issue is how do we husband the rest of our resources? So, I don't really.
Sorry about that, Steve. I was had a little coughing going on there. And I think the smokes are finally getting me, and I'm going to succumb to lung cancer.
That's one thing or the other, isn't it?
Yeah. It's always something.
Always something.
It's always something. Okay, let's look at some of the other stories that are on the page here. What have we got going on? Junk bonds, British Labour Party after Brexit. I was going to say breakfast. You look at how bad our political races with the Democrats and Republicans, Clinton and Trump as our leading candidates, but actually these people almost look competent compared to what is going on in Britain. The population voted.
I don't live there.
The population voted for Brexit,
Right.
or breakfast, or tea and
They
crumpets.
voted for breakfast.
Yeah.
Same thing.
But now, we're month, 2 months, whatever after this vote, and nobody in Britain has, even people who advocated for Brexit have no clue as to how to accomplish this task. It seems to be beyond their technical capabilities, um, and how in theory it should be easy, just say we're not dealing with you, we don't deal with your rules and regulations, we'll just make our own rules and regulations and you can go fuck yourselves.
Right.
But somehow it doesn't seem to be so easy. Why is that, Steve?
Well, it's analogous to the whole problem of, less. Brexit is just kind of like a small version of, dealing with less. We're not used to less. We want more. Tomorrow is going to have more than today. The day after tomorrow is going to have more than the day after. I mean, this is our birthright. This is our grandparents' birthright. It's been this way for hundreds of years. We always get more. And so the British are Brexiting themselves because, the hard reality is they don't have more. So nobody knows how to deal with it. And they never had to deal with it before. I mean, England didn't have to worry about being a part of other countries unless they were invaded. I mean, before the European Union, it was like, Adolf Hitler over there on the Channel Coast, sending airplanes over. And, then it was, you go back to William of Orange. So it's not really something that they're used to dealing with. And this whole idea of kind of undoing something, it's like dealing with glass. It just cuts against the grain. So I'm not really surprised. And it'll probably be a lot more confusion, and because the implications haven't really set in yet. I mean, this is just, Brexit is just a small part of a much bigger picture where there's less resources. The pie that everybody's been getting a slice of is getting smaller. So either everybody gets a much smaller slice of pie, or there's some people that will get the pie and everybody else gets nothing. So, there's going to be a lot of confusion and a lot of, frankly, there's going to be a lot of conflict. In other parts of the world, there's not conflict. I don't think there's going to be a civil war in England, but, places that are more, have more violent tendencies. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a civil war in Turkey. They got the same problem. All these countries have the same problem. It's just, and they don't know how to deal with it.
Turkey is already basically, in a civil war with the Kurds. That's internal warfare, and of course, their esteemed leader, or Erdoğan, as I like to call him, has gone on his own little civil war against his own military, and the entire government apparatus, all the teachers. I mean, he's fired something like 60,000 people so far, and these people are all systemic, right? They have positions somewhere in the apparatus. Now, who does he get to step in on a moment's notice to all of these apparatchiks, right? The country's got to break down. And once your government apparatus breaks down, that's when you get, your anarchy and civil war and all the rest. Factions are created and different people try to take power and so forth and so on. So, Turkey's already seemed that way. I think that the question is, when does this level of disarray move its way northward into Europe proper? When does it make it into France, for instance? France to me seems like, the closest of the main European nations to breaking down into its own civil war. I think Francois Hollandaise sauce. I mean, he has he has got like a
There are all
2%
these countries you can't ever visit, Ari. You know, it's like,
2% popularity, and then you've got Marie Lapinus, right? She's leading the march of the Nazis there, and you got a terrorist shoot 'em up every other week or so in France. Starting off there with Charlie Hebdo and a weekly entertainment on the news shows.
well, it's the same thing. It's a, trying to deal with diminished resources and diminished expectations, because everybody in these countries, including hellholes like Syria and Somalia, they've gotten the promise. Somewhere in their lives, they've seen a TV set, and they have a really good idea how Americans live, and they want to live exactly the same way. And here you have forces that they don't understand, and governments that they don't have any connection with, telling them or acting in a very direct way that this isn't going to happen. You're not going to live like an American. In fact, you're probably not going to live as well as your grandfather. So, so you reach for a Kalashnikov and become a revolutionary. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it spreading more. The resource states are very vulnerable because, you can break down the internal, controls, the way the countries are run, like in Libya. And the people that are left behind, they had to sell the oil. I mean, this doesn't mean their economy's fixed, or it doesn't even mean our economy's fixed. We're just hastening our own bankruptcy. And it's a phenomenon. We're not used to dealing with it. The Turks certainly don't know how to deal with it. The Syrians, I feel sorry for every Syrian, because they've gotten into something that they had no real say in it. All they wanted was a better life, and instead they got barrel bombs. So,
well, and I think it's true that all of us, that's all anybody ever wanted. There's a constant blame game on why did we go down this route? Why did we build all the interstate highways and the ring roads and all the suburban subdivisions of McMansions that are basically going useless and worthless. As the energy disappears, that style of living is just going the way of the dinosaur. It's inevitable. But all along the way, it wasn't really a conscious decision by anybody, I think, except perhaps some people at the very top who were making the biggest profits from it and wanted to, continue to make that kind of money. But, nobody really understood or knew these issues. If you go back 30 years or 40 years, everybody figures, this is the way society is, and this is the way people will live now and into the perpetual future, and we will go trekking the stars. The media sold everybody on visions of warp drives and dilithium crystals and endless power to do whatever we wanted, populate the entire universe with Homo sapiens. All of this was reachable if you go back to the 1960s. John Kennedy, we will put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, and so forth. And so this idea of perpetual and endless growth, and that we all have this right, this God-given right to live like kings, drive willy-nilly around in the neighborhood. This has just been culturally inbred, and it's almost impossible for people to let go of it who've been brought up in it, because they know no other way.
right.
So it's a real problem. All right, Steve, you got any closing thoughts? Any other stuff you want to cover before I wrap up the show today?
Well, I haven't said all of the foregoing here for the past, hour or whatever. I'd like to tell everybody I'm not really a doomer. It's like, there's doomers, and then there's, whole category of, sub-doomers, and they get down to me. I mean, I still think that, that reasonableness will prevail, but it's not going to even be part of the discussion unless, something happens, something concrete and dramatic that, convinces people that the status quo has just basically played itself out. And, I tell people, I was like, the time isn't really right for a revolution, but that time is coming, and the important thing is to be aware of that aspect of it, and it realizes that the kind of changes that we're talking about here isn't going to bring a return back to the glory days. We're not going to see the American way. It's going to be replaced by something else. We can call it the American way, but it's going to be different, and it's going to have less. That's really going to be the characteristic. It's going to be less. So, I'm looking at this whole process as a change rather than, decline and fall. Right, the decline and fall of the American empire. The empire probably disappeared, but all empires disappeared. But, after the Romans left, then you had the Europeans were still there. There was a smaller number of them, but they did pretty well. And so that guy Gutenberg came up with a printing press and screwed everything up.
Yeah, well, I remember watching, I think it was called The Day the Universe Changed. It was a BBC series that was broadcast on PBS when I was in my teens. James Burke basically went through how various inventions and various things changed our paradigm and our way of living. And one of the episodes was on the Gutenberg printing press, and that definitely was a revolution. But of course, so was the steam engine, and the internal combustion engine, and electric lights, and Marconi and radio communications. Each of those things changed who we are, changed the paradigm that we live under.
The internet, RE, otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Absolutely. The internet has been a huge revolution in the way things are done. And, one of my conversations with David Carritz, theoretical physicist who was studying collapse issues, is the idea of irreversibility, and how once you network up these things, that to go back to the simpler ways of doing things is pretty much impossible to do, at least in any kind of organized fashion. And so he was one of the proponents of the fast collapse type of scenario that I tend to agree with, as opposed to more slow catabolic type collapse, long emergency, the kind of things that John Michael Greer and Jim Kunstler talk about. I do see this, what we have, there being a significant break here at some point, not just a long, slow boiling frog decay. We're going to see a change of substantive proportions. But then that doesn't necessarily mean instant death for everybody. It just means that our style of living will certainly change quite a bit, and we'll need to adapt. And so the idea is to try to adapt beforehand. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. I think that, the thing about America, there's a lot of roads we can go down. America has so much influence. The whole modern period is all about America. It's all about us. It actually boils down. It's all about me. It's not about you, Ari. It's all about me. So it's about me being happy, me being entertained. I have enough baseball games to look at. that sort of thing. That's what matters. So America has so much influence in the world, and it's also powerful militarily and political. It's remarkably stable. I mean, even though the establishment is incredibly corrupt and the people involved are a bunch of crooks and they're not very smart, the system itself manages to kind of keep going. And as long as it can do that, as long as it can absorb these blows, what it means is America continues to suck the resources out of the rest of the world, can deny the rest of the world the ability to consume, so that the United States, to a very long period of time, can continue to be comfortable. At least some of the people in America can be comfortable while the rest of the world is living into basically, a mess. So, I think it depends on your viewpoint. If you're a Syrian, if you live in Aleppo, and you take a little walk around your neighborhood, provided you don't get shot at by somebody, I mean, you figure, hey, the collapse has happened already. I mean, it's gone. Everything is gone. There's just nothing here but concrete and dust. Okay, so you compare that with somebody in Fairfax County, Virginia. They've got a job working for a Beltway bandit. They're living in a nice house. They got 3 cars. Their kids are going to law school. They got all this stuff. And, that can keep going. We can spread Syrians around the world and we can take their consumption and take their resources. We don't have to have constantly expanding resource base. If it's all focused on us, we get the pie, everybody else gets the dust. So that's, one of the roads. I don't think it's a good road. Personally, I think it would be better if we were more rational about the whole process and basically discussed it. The big problem that, we don't have the problem, but the rest of the world, particularly the establishment, the biggest problem is nobody wants to talk about the problem. So we have these 3 gigantic resource problems and 3 gigantic demand problems, and we don't discuss it. Nobody talks about it. We all just kind of like evade the whole thing and hope somebody else is going to take care of it, which is impossible. We're the only ones that are going to take care of it, one way or the other. And if we do it voluntarily, then, at least we can manage the situation and keep things together, at least reasonable facility for quite a while. We just have to, decide what it is we're going to give up. And,
well, I doubt that there are too many Americans who will willingly give up anything so that a Syrian could live a little better. And as far as most Americans are concerned, anybody who's living out there, they're all just, animals anyhow, that is how the foreigners and particularly brown-skinned people. And,
right. Well, that's why the discussion has to, we have to discuss these problems. We can look and say, look, there's a Syrian, he'll go someplace and, he'll blow up a building, a subway train or something, and drive a truck through a crowd. He'll kill 50 people and, cause a big disturbance in the, kind of like our bourgeois sense of security. And it's like, the Syrian's important. We have to do something for them. If Syria, even if you just stop the fighting, the Syrians could go back home. That would make things better for them, and it really wouldn't cost us in the United States a whole lot. And it's trying to keep the same standard of waste and profligacy, trying to keep that going. All we're doing is bankrupting ourselves as fast as we can, and we think we're being more prosperous, but actually we're doing the exact opposite. So. It's like do a little bit for this guy over there and that guy over there and make it easy on ourselves at the same time. I mean, how it works out in detail, obviously everybody's going to have to work it out. Our institutions will do it, but again, we got to have the conversation. If we don't have the conversation, we just keep on keeping on until something important breaks. And then we have, then we have all these real problems.
Well, my general sense of it is that we're going to have real problems. I don't see the conversation happening even within countries, much less between countries. and all you see is a rising amount of acrimony between these various nation states and powers. Putin is demonized on this side. The Chinese are, saber rattling in the South China Sea. Everybody's claiming this is mine, this is mine, this is my right, and so forth. And the idea of sharing and downsizing are not popular.
Well, I can give you 3 examples where we actually have done it, though. So it's not that it's completely impossible. Okay.
All right, tell us those examples, and we will leave on a hopeful note.
Okay. We had, atomic bomb was invented in 1940. Okay. So we built the first atomic bomb in 1945, and then we deployed it in 1945.
And in fact, today, August 6th, is the anniversary date of the day we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima.
Right. But we haven't dropped the atomic bomb on anybody else since. In fact, we, over time, imperfectly built a regime where it's become, at least on the surface, there's less reason to use nuclear weapons, and it's harder to use nuclear weapons. And the chances of using nuclear weapons, is a purposeful, we're going to wipe out the other guy kind of regime, that gets farther and farther away too. And it's all done because, people realize what the consequences are, and then they have all these different talks at all these different levels. They have a discussion about it to say, well, we have to do this, that, and the other. But of course, in the interim, you've had the Soviet Union fell apart, and the satellite states, who, like Ukraine was a nuclear power, they almost had as many warheads as Russia. So they had to kind of like demilitarize these areas and come up with a regime to do it and try to deal with all the fuel. And it's all been done. And so if they can do something like that, then they can deal with some of these other problems. So that's one example. Another example is the business with the ozone hole in Antarctica. When they discovered the ozone hole, it took them a while to figure out why they had one in the first place. And it turned out it was refrigerants, propellant. So said, well, we got a problem with the ozone hole. We got to get rid of these chemicals and modify. So they modified the chemicals, and they got rid of the, CFCs and spray cans and stuff like that. And it was all done with a treaty. And it wasn't really a big problem. It was inconvenience, but CFC causing an ozone hole in South America is manageable. It's managed to shrink a little bit. It's not as controversial as it was before. So that's 2. And the third one is we just had the Paris Accord. We had all these countries they live like, grandees. They're eating at 3-star Michelin restaurants and ordered around town in gigantic armored limousines and, fly first class and all the rest. And they agreed, in principle, they were going to do something about carbon emissions. Okay, so the first step is to have the conversation. So, they had part of a conversation, kind of a sort of like, and it's a conversation where they weren't finger pointing at China or India or these other developing countries. Says, well, we got a problem. We need to do something about it. Let's at least talk about it, and then we can get together another. It's a step. It didn't solve the problem. The best way to solve the problem is get rid of all the fucking cars. But, at least they're kind of like moving in that direction. So from my viewpoint, it's a big deal. I mean, the alternative is to send an army into China and blow up all their power plants. That's crazy. It's better to have a conversation about it. Say, listen, it's better still to say, look, we're in America. We're the leadership country. What we're going to do is we're going to cut our energy consumption in half. My guess is you could cut energy consumption in half in America in 2 years, and nobody would even notice it.
I tend to agree. I do see the tremendous waste that everyone goes through. It's not just energy; it's the food. I mean, the food waste is unbelievable.
Right. Why not? It's so cheap. Why not just throw it away?
Yeah. It's that's the way it is. And those are successes that have occurred in the past, and one stays hopeful that some more successes will be achieved as we move down this path to wherever we're going. And that's another thing I like to reinforce, is that nobody, no matter how much of an expert, how much of a scientist or whatever knows the future for sure. Nostradamus' work is a very unrewarding work, trying to predict the future, and the further out,
I'll tell you what,
the further out on the timeline you go, the harder it becomes to be correct in what your outlook is going to be.
the future is less, Ari.
Yeah, the future is less. Yeah.
We
Well,
are
I think
now in the age
I think you can pick out trends like that. Yes,
yes.
future. What I like to say is a lower per capita energy future, and so we'll have to come up with ways to live as a lower per capita energy consumptive species. That's all. So just that's what we'll have to do. There's no avoiding it. All right. Well, that's enough for this week's collapse update with Stephen R.E. And we'll be back to do another one, assuming the world has not been blown up in between now and the next one.
Doomer, you.
Or hopefully the internet stays up and running, because if the internet goes down, I have no more reason to live. All right.
You can smoke cigarettes, Ari.
Yeah, that too. I can kill myself a little faster, right? Okay, that's all the doom. This time until next time, here on the Collapse Cafe. Later, diners.